and getting trapped here. Hey, no, what for? What is it? I was speaking to a group of Africans in Harlem. That's what I was asking you. I was saying to you, here's Africa, this huge continent that has made every other nation other than Africa great. All this wealth that you hear of the Bears, of Anglo, of Rhodes Scholar, you know, where did they get wealth from? They got it from Africa. Yet the wealthiest nation is where they're telling you not to go. Now, you locked up here, unable to travel to Africa, not knowing what opportunities there are. Meanwhile, the Lebanese, you know, the Syrians, the Asiatic, the European is gobbling up the whole of Africa. By the time they tell you it is safe to come, the advisory has been lifted, there'll be no land there. You know, you won't find anything. So it's a false image that they give you, not travel, because they know if you go to Africa, you'll be rich. Anybody, I met a brother, he says he was a software engineer. You know, he has all the qualification, unemployed. Now, I also know an Asian who came from India, a software engineer, and started a company with $100, you know, selling computer parts. Now he has a turnover of $1.5 million after 2 years in Kampala, in just one street. So the opportunities that exist in Africa are unlimited, even for people who have no skill. Even for people, you know, I know there's a big thing here of you need to go to Africa with a skill. It would be a good thing if you came to Africa with a skill. But even for people who have no skill, come and buy land. Come and get land. Or go to a chief and be a supplicant for a year. And then they give you land. But I know, you know, here it might be difficult, supplication, you know, to come and live with somebody and cook water for them and, you know, clean their house and feed them, and they send you on an errand, and you do. I think here you should be saying, you know, I'm not doing that. I'm not going there, you know. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm not cooking some water for you. Because here you take all the beautiful things and turn them into a negative, and turn all the negative things and turn them into a positive. Yeah.
You know, you're having those views is one thing. But you're having those views and having 2 radio stations is something altogether different.
Yes, yeah.
Now, when you talk to Africans, do they tend to believe what you say about America?
There are 2 categories of African people in Africa, and these 2 categories, there is a dichotomy in audience. One is the one that calls itself educated. These are people who have got certificates. You know, and they travel with them in their briefcase every day, even when they have no job.
Mostly from European institutions?
Mostly from education institutions in Uganda that imitate, you know, word by word European institutions. So now they consider themselves totally learned. They have nothing to learn from anybody. And you know, when they went to school, in most of these universities, they don't even have books, you know, so the teacher had a book and, you know, maybe he lent it to a couple of students and he gave notes. You find one lecture room has, you know, 500 students. And that is a morning session, and there is an evening. Now they have put a night session because, you know, the World Bank does not fund higher education, remember. So they tell the government not to give money to higher education. We can understand that because, you know, if you have higher education, you begin to say, well, excuse me, why are you removing subsidies on transport or on agriculture? So those people that lived in the city, when I started my radio program, and it would broadcast from 8:30 to 10, you know, called African Metaphysics, they were very antagonistic because, first of all, it's telling them about things that they've never had. So, you know, the last thing a person needs, if you're going around and you are an academic on African history or on African agriculture, and somebody is telling you that, you know, the basis of agriculture should be that you grow the food you eat. You know, that if a cash crop is a food crop depending on who eats it. So if I'm not going to grow coffee because at the end of the day, I'm not going to, you know, to pluck, you know, coffee beans and put them in a pot and feed my children with.
Right.
So the first thing I need to grow is food that I can eat. And after I have exhausted all my options, one of them say, okay, I have some, leisure time to grow coffee. But the agriculturist who has been trained at the University of Reading, that is not what he's learned. He's learned that you have to grow cash crop first, because that cash crop is needed in a cup in Paris and in Germany. And when they take the African coffee, they don't even call it African coffee. They call it German coffee, espresso, cappuccino. Now, those of you who have been to Italy, I don't think you have seen any coffee tree. So, those people are trained, and they're trained to create a paralysis of analysis. So their thing is, they don't want to hear what you've got to say. But I knew this because of my knowledge of my people. I knew that the city would be resistant, so I started in a rural area. In a rural area, my radio station would broadcast to southern Uganda, northern Tanzania, part of Rwanda and Burundi, and eastern Congo. Now there, if you say to people, what made Africa great in ancient time was its ability to grow food and store grain. And nations like Canada can feed their population for 150 years if food production stops, because they have food mountains, they have silos, they keep food, they have food security. So if you say security is not a gun, because even the soldier who's holding the gun needs to eat, and I can demonstrate that because I have, a situation where I was giving free food, in the city, and, even guards on the bank, they would abandon their guns and just run to that truck to get them bananas. So the person in the village can hear this. And then if he has no granary, he will start building a granary the following day. So the knowledge then is relevant to him. But if you tell somebody in the city looking for a job that growing food is important, he's away from his land. He's already abandoned that. That's primitive. He doesn't want to be there. So my thing was to first begin with the base and to first change the society that is rural. And I got people growing millet and growing and resorting to traditional juices that they used to have, and the food and the tradition they used to eat it in, to the extent that when we introduced millet, when they are planting, we do live broadcast. This is 98.3 Great African Radio. Today we're standing in this field in Ishaka, and the first hoe in this garden is about to be raised. And here comes Shunga, and he's holding a hoe, dignified, and he stands there. He needs to do a libation, and they brought him a huge gourd, a calabash of water. And by that time, people are hearing all this on the radio, so a crowd has already gathered. And and the man also knows now that he's in the limelight. So when he's swinging the hoe, he's going to to perform an incredible flip, and the ground is broken. So everybody else now in the village hears, wow, they are growing millet. So straight away they all start growing millet. Then when they're harvesting, not only the first harvest going to be broadcast live, but there's also a price of $100 or $150 for the first harvest. That within a short time, in a year and a half, we were able to get a crop that was almost dying out, which is sits very high on the nutritional table, which is pest resistant, which is really a fabulous crop, millet, and raise the harvest to the highest harvest on record. Now, people even grow millet as flowers, around their house, because Europeans taught us that you just cut all the food from your house, you plant them flowers, but when the time comes, you can't get that flower. If it is sarase, that is something else, because then you could drink tea out of it. So even the concept of plants around the house has to change, so that it reflects herbs that you can use as either medicinal herbs or as a tea, but also things that you can eat. So to coordinate the pawpaw, the mango. So that information was totally relevant and very receptive. But also, the biggest problem that faces Africa now is the problem of the inferiority complex.